Good Wednesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. We will talk plenty about the Browns, but first, Damar Hamlin, who had cardiac arrest on that Monday night game, the safety for the Buffalo Bills, continues to show some improvements. He remains in intensive care, in critical condition, but there are signs that he is improving slowly but surely. Again, he's expected to remain in intensive care as they continue to monitor and treat him. But the good news is there are some positive signs. As small as they may be, they are positive signs. Well, the Browns and pretty much every other NFL team dealing with getting ready to play a football game after that Nick Chubb, David Njoku, Kevin Stefanski talked about getting ready to play given what they saw Monday night with Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy situation, you know. Just overall, it's tough to even talk about. So for now, I'll just praying for him and hoping, you know, that he comes out of it soon.
You never think things like this happens until it happens, you know. So it's hard to just, you know, have like a game plan off, you know, the rip of what we can do. I mean, yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough, and I don't know all the information that was done, you know. I just hope that everything will be okay.
Sending our best wishes, sending our prayers to them, because that's what we can do right now. You know, so it's our players are all processing. I think all of us are in different ways. We have people here for them should they need anybody to talk to. But again, tough times for this young man, and we're obviously pulling for him.
So welcome in Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com. And Jeff, you know, because games are on TV, you tend to, I mean, these are humans. If you go into locker rooms, you realize that. And TV doesn't show just how physical and how violent that sport is. So I get why everybody is a little pause for concern.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think people who do what we do and have more exposure to the guys behind the scenes and see them with their families and see them, you know, hanging out and being people, not just football players or athletes. I think it's hit us harder than I think it's hit the general public. And it's been a very tough week for us to work. I know, look, I cover the Browns and the Lions. They're not related at all to this. And it's been like both of those teams are really somber. Like there's a pall over everybody right now, and it's you know, Tuesday morning. I'll admit it was really, really tough to motivate myself to do anything that day other than just think about what I saw the night before and process it all. You know, it's, you know, as somebody who's had, you know, I've been a heart patient in the Cleveland Clinic before, so I'm especially sensitive to when things like this happen with the heart. And mine was thankfully nothing as serious as what his was, but it is something that I'm glad that is taking the weight, and it is showing the humanity of the players and the people who behind the helmets and under the helmets and under the pads, and it's showing that to more and more of America that I think was a little, I don't want to say skeptical about it, but I think that they had forgotten a little bit that there is some humanity involved in the game. And it's terrible that it's taken such a tragedy to make that happen, but it is kind of cool to see. And it's also cool to see all the fan bases, everybody pulling for this guy. You know, by all accounts, a great guy. I've never actually met him. I feel kind of bad. He was at the combine. I didn't even stand in front of his podium when he gave his talk. So it's been a very long week with this, and I'm glad to hear that he's doing better. It sounds like some of the things that he's going through medically are very positive in terms of, you know, getting unintubated. I think they call it extubated, and, you know, being flipped over onto his stomach, which relieves some of the pressure from the fluid in his lungs and things like that. Those are all very positive signs. And we're just hopeful that he can get out and, you know, resume as much of a normal life as he can once this is all done.
All right, so still no word on what they're going to do with the Bengals and the Bills. There's all kinds of talk that could be impacted for Week 18 games. Browns have not been told they're not going to play the Steelers, so we're going to move ahead, talk a little bit about that. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, this is Brian Rizzo calling out of the Columbus area, Mansfield area. I just have a quick question for you. if you had to pick somebody on the roster that won't be there next year that would surprise the fans, who do you think that guy that surprisingly won't be a Brown next year? I mean, we obviously know that Kareem's probably not coming back and, some of the free agents, but, like, if you could pick one guy that would surprise you that won't be on the team next year, who do you think it would be? Go Browns.
Jeff, I think that's a great question. I will let you answer that one first. I have a guy in mind, I think.
I don't know if it would be a surprise, but I think John Johnson. I'm not sure how many people actually expect him to be back. It's pretty easy to get out of his contract. I don't expect him back. If you go a little bit broader than that, like more off the wall, it's tough because he's a local guy. But Denzel Ward has not played to the contract and is not having a very good year. And he's injured. He's injured again. He's probably not going to play this weekend, from what it looks like. I wonder if they would make that move. That's given all the PR, we'll say interesting PR moves that they've made this year. I'm not sure that they could get away with that, but it's not necessarily the worst move by football standards. So I'll go with JJ3, but if you push beyond that, I'll say Denzel just as a shot in the dark.
I think the one that might be a little bit of surprise if they decided to move on from him would be Jedrick Wills. I don't think they'll do that, but that might be a guy that they just don't think is going to quite work out the way they need it to. All right, along those lines, CBSSports.com, team needs and notable free agents. For the Browns, they list the notable teams without a first-round pick. Defensive tackle, linebacker, wide receiver, and edge. Now, Jack Conklin's not a free agent. They signed him to an extension, so they kind of missed that one. They weren't paying attention or whatever. So you see the free agents that are likely not going to be back. Of all those, I think they got to readjust their thinking for defensive tackle. I think that got exposed as a huge, man, we can't do that again.
Oh, and there were a lot of us who first guessed their strategy on that. You can't keep taking third, fourth round guys who don't have very high ceilings and just don't make that sort of impact. And when your top free agent is a guy that everybody in Jacksonville couldn't wait to get rid of in Taven Bryan, you've got to aim higher than that. I know that the quote unquote money ball dictates that you don't spend a lot of money on your defensive line. I think it's time to recalibrate that because we're seeing it. If you look around the league at some of the bottom feeding teams, the Chicago Bears don't spend very much money on their defensive line. They're terrible. The Browns didn't spend very much on their defensive line. Their defensive line outside of Myles Garrett is not very good, and it impacts the guys behind them too. And I do think that if you spend more on your defensive line, you can maybe skimp a little bit more on the linebacker. We'll see if they approach it that way, but that's something that I've been talking with a couple of guys behind the scenes that that's one of the theories that we have for what this offseason will entail is that do they value defensive tackle more because they realize that they've erred in it for God knows how many years since Sheldon Richardson walked, certainly, that they have to do more and that there's a ripple effect of that it will make Myles better. It will make whoever is playing across from Myles better. It will make the guys behind them better. I'm a big believer in that. And I hope that this front office has come to that epiphany as well. We'll see.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying you got to go get an all-pro guy. You just got to get a guy that can stand firm and hold double teams and absorb block, especially if you want guys like Jacob Phillips, Tony Fields, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, fast, undersized line. You completely eliminate their effectiveness if the defensive linemen are at their feet constantly.
You can't be small up front and small at linebacker. You got to choose one or the other. The way the NFL is going right now, you don't want to be too big at linebacker because that means you're too slow. You need those guys to be able to cover tight ends and running backs and so forth. So if you've got to add some serious block, I would love for them to go out and get a pocket pushing nose tackle. Those don't go on trees. There are a couple of them available in free agency though, and it's also not a bad draft for them, even where the Browns are picking. So they're going to have some options there. Let's hope that they use it because for me, it's the number one need on the team.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, before we go to a break, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey Dave, young Browns fan here, and all I keep hearing is next year, next year, next year. And my dad, who's in his mid-60s now, says that when he was my age, he would always say he can't wait for next year. So I went back and watched all of the fumble, the drive, and what happened in the 2020 playoffs again. And it does seem like we're cursed at times. So I was just wondering, what's different about this team that makes next year a real Super Bowl possibility versus what we had in the 80s and 90s? Thanks a lot. Love your show.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. You know, even in the heyday, they never had a really athletic quarterback. Bernie Kosar was a really good quarterback. He's not athletic. Brian Sipe was not really athletic. He was undersized. Those were guys those teams in the 80s and 90s that I was covering them, and they just figured out a way to win. They didn't always have the most talent. I think this roster is probably more talented when you look across the landscape of it. But they found a way to win, and this team seems to find a way to lose.
That's a fairly good assessment of it. I would say Deshaun Watson was the last player that was pictured there while the voicemail was going on. He is the reason why you should have hope. And I know that's a tough sell right now after what we've seen from him this year. It hasn't been what I think anybody really truly wanted. But give him more time in this offense, more communication, more chemistry with his receivers. He is a difference-making quarterback. I've seen it firsthand. I covered him in Houston. He took a group that was, they won a playoff game with Brock Osweiler and then got smoked, or almost won a playoff game with Brock Osweiler, I should say, behind a terrible offensive line. And he went in and he transcended all that. Look, that's a team that was one quarter away from knocking the Chiefs out in the divisional round in the year that the Chiefs won the playoffs, the Super Bowl. Deshaun is the reason why you would have hope. Whether you like that or not, that's not going to be a popular answer, but you cannot win without a top flight quarterback. And you talked about Bernie. I loved Bernie. Those were the teams of my high school years. The drive and the fumble still hurt all these years later, but Bernie, you knew that he was going to maximize what he had, but there was a ceiling to what he had, and Deshaun's ceiling is so much higher than that. And I think that's why you have it. You saw it in a couple of throws last week. You saw why. Oh my goodness! Like, okay, yeah, this is the guy that we wanted. This is the guy that is worth the however much money they're paying him. And I think that's why you have the hope. And hope also that you can get your impact players on defense, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, whoever else is back there. I think the young cornerbacks are doing fantastic, that they can keep playing and growing together, and hopefully that the coordination is a little bit better next year. And that's your hope. You also have hope just looking around the AFC North a little bit. Where's Pittsburgh at? Cincinnati's obviously dang good. They're not going away. Baltimore, who knows what's going on there? They get a little bit of chaos going on. We'll see what happens with that. But that would be the other reason, is that I think going into this offseason, there's no reason that the Browns can't be the second best team in the division and keep climbing for that. And with the offseason that they've got in front of them, that's where my hope is.
Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look a little bit deeper at the Browns' defense. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Ernie from Virginia calling. In regard to the Browns' last game against Washington, it was pretty clear that when the defense plays man for man, that they actually do quite well. I'm not an expert on defense, but at least that way it gives the guys who do have the talent a chance to use their talents as opposed to that complicated zone that they were in before. Maybe it was just a fluke, but it sure looked like the defense was much better off playing tighter on the line than standing back 10 yards every time and letting people get 9-yard receptions. That's pretty much all I had to say. Sure, I'm looking forward to next year. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, I thought Denzel Ward looked pretty good. And again, I've said this for a few weeks now. I just don't think they're asking guys to do what they do well. And that comes back to Joe Woods. It comes back to the coordinator.
It does. When you're drafting these guys, you draft Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, Martin Emerson. What were all those guys' strengths coming out of college? Man-on-man coverage, press man coverage specifically for a couple of those guys. Being able to disrupt the initial release, turn and run and stay on the hip. They're not the ball hawk zone guys that you see. Why don't you play to their strengths? I'm totally with the caller and with you on this, Dave. I don't understand the lack of playing zone defense. I don't know the exact number or figure of it, but I saw it. I was following along on Twitter earlier today with a couple guys. I believe they're 25th in the time percentage that they're in man coverage. That's look, you built your defense around having press man corners and man coverage specialist corners and safeties that play well off. By the way, that's when Greg Delpit's at his best as a safety, when he has less things to read and react to. It's weird that they just don't. They haven't figured that out. That Joe Woods hasn't figured that out. That Kevin Stefanski hasn't imposed that upon him to make him figure that out. That's been a definite source of frustration. And I agree with you. I thought that was Denzel's best game of the season, and there haven't been a lot of those this year. Now, some of that obviously is the fact that Washington was playing Carson Wentz.
Yes. Yeah, but
I still can't believe they went to that. I still can't believe that they did that.
Yeah.
Now they've gone to Sam Howell. Good for them. A little too late for them, but I'll happily take that W for Cleveland.
So here's another thing about the Browns, and this one since week 7, and Jake Trotter tweets this out. Opposing raw QBR 35.2 first. Opposing total QBR adjusted for QBR strength 42.7 second. First in QBR with man coverage. EPA is 5th. Efficiency is 5th. Passing yards allowed, 1st. Interceptions per attempt, 7th. Yards allowed per dropback, 5.5, and that's 4th. The problem is the first 6 weeks were a train wreck when they needed them. You can't have a defense that plays better when the games don't matter because you basically are on the brink of being eliminated from playoff contention. So I guess what I'm saying is that should not be a reason to keep the status quo.
And I feel like we had this conversation a year ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
Doesn't this seem like eerily familiar? I hope that resonates in Berea because I can't fathom the fan reaction if they bring Joe Woods back. Let alone a lot of us in the media will have our knives sharpened for it. And look, Joe Woods is a good guy, and I think we've seen that he can make the adjustments, but dude's got this season's lost because he was lost at the beginning of the season. I don't want to put it all on him. The players obviously didn't execute all that well, and they did have some injuries, but it's a recurring theme, and that's a recurring theme that's keeping the Browns out of the playoffs, and that's not where this team can be, not with the roster that they have.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Martin Emerson, that's a guy that, whatever they look for in cornerbacks, keep doing that and figure out what you need to do to get defensive tackles like that, because Martin Emerson looks like he can play.
Well, he's been fantastic, and he's one of the guys. I went through and did a film review, and he's so adept at understanding where he needs to be on a route. Look, his man coverage skills. I thought he was, by the way, probably the best Browns cornerback in zone coverage. I think he's got that ability, the eyes to do it, and the quickness to do it. He is a future NFL starting outside cornerback. He can also play in the slot. You're seeing a guy that's a third-round pick, one of the 2 or 3 best. Like obviously, Sauce Gardner is probably going to be the rookie of the year. He might be the best cornerback in the NFL as a rookie. There might not be a second better corner. Like Derek Stingley in Houston's been good, but Emerson's right there, man. He's a very talented guy. And like you said, if you can tune your eyes as well as they have at the cornerback position, because Greg Newsome, I think we all agree, can play. Then Greedy has shown that when he's healthy, he can play. Denzel, obviously a big hit when he's been healthy and can stay on the field reliably and play man coverage. If they can do anything with that with the defensive tackle, and thus far they've shown that they haven't been able to do that, maybe they need to find a scouting consultant or something who can help them with the defensive line, because they're really good at finding the cornerbacks, man. And Emerson, again, I cannot say how excited I am about it. He's a very, very good NFL cornerback right away, and has a much higher ceiling than a lot of the guys who were taken before him. And it's nice to see him playing to that level already in Cleveland. I have some bias. I was very high on him in the draft. I thought he should have gone around earlier, It's nice to see it when you're right, because we're always reminded, Dave, when we're wrong on the draft picks. When it's right, we got to toot our horn a little bit too.
All right, so this is one of the reasons why I say this is unacceptable. Here is a list of the quarterbacks that the Browns have faced, and you should have a whole lot more wins than the Browns do. Baker Mayfield, Joe Flacco, Mitchell Trubisky, Marcus Mariota. You do have Justin Herbert, then Bailey Zappi, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Tua, Josh Allen. Tom Brady hasn't played well, Kyle Allen, Tyler Huntley, Andy Dalton, Carson Wentz, Kenny Pickett. You look at those starting quarterbacks, and you are under 500 with the talent you have defensively. That's not acceptable. You could say anything you want. It isn't acceptable.
That's just not a good list. Obviously, there's Herbert, Allen, Burrow. That's fine. You don't expect to slow those guys down. Bailey Zappi, what's left of Joe Flacco, who, by the way, is inactive these days.
Mariota is another one. Kyle
Allen will never play in the NFL again. Like the Texans saw what they got from him, and they sent him to the practice squad. They actually cut him. That's rough, man. That's some very important context for the criticism against Joe was in the defense.
Yes, 100%. You cannot win only 8 games playing those quarterbacks, because you're not going to get that easy of a draw against quarterbacks. Probably again, you're going to face significantly better You only got Jackson and Burrow once each, so that's. And
Lamar didn't play well against Cleveland when he played. So
that's
unacceptable. That's a very frustrating. I hadn't seen that tweet. That's a very frustrating list. When it's thrown in my face like that,
it's ugly. It's ugly.
Blood pressure's up, baby.
Jeff Risdon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Plus, one thing we learned about the Browns in Week 17. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, I was wondering if you guys thought it was necessary that we also bring guys that Deshaun Watson has played with, like a Dearness Johnson. You know, I would see us trading him to the Cardinals alongside with Ronnie possibly or somebody else. You know, I would really want to see that Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver with reliable hands. And also I wanted to know if it was even possible if we could possibly get Duke Johnson back. Because I know he played a little bit with, you know, Deshaun. I was just wondering what you guys thought about, you know, the possibilities of doing those things. I know you said how you like more of a real scat back in the backfield alongside with Deshaun, you know. So, yeah, I just wanted to see what you guys think. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, I don't think going out and I think he meant David Johnson and Duke Johnson. I don't think it's necessary to get guys that Deshaun played with before necessarily. I think he's got to get used to the guys here. But yeah. I would like them to get another veteran wide receiver. I really would.
Yeah, Andre Hopkins would be fantastic, but that price tag it can't be done. Now there is actually some talk coming out of Arizona that if they're going to scrap it out, that he will be available. But I mean, again, Cleveland doesn't have the draft assets to make that sort of trade or the cap room to make it work. But yeah, that would be fantastic because when they were together, DeAndre was the best wide receiver in the NFL. I will absolutely put my money behind that. Yeah, the running back, you can find guys. And again, you know, a guy that can catch passes out of the backfield, it's nice. It is something that Deshaun does like to use. But I'm not – look, this is a guy who took over a year off. I think any chemistry that he has with those guys is probably gone. You know, again, there's still people that want to bring in Will Fuller. I'm not interested in that. He's just not going to make it work. A veteran wide receiver would be great. I think a more stable veteran tight end. Not that they need a tight end, but if you can get a guy who's come in who maybe, you know, had a cup of coffee with Deshaun at some point, and the Texans cycled through. I mean, my goodness, after his first year, I want to say that they drafted 3 tight ends in the first 4 rounds the next year. Not hardly any of those guys could play, but they need just a little bit of oomph there. And the offensive line from Deshaun's time in Houston. Look, I covered a team where Ode Abushi was their best offensive lineman. I'm not really interested in any of the guys who were around and that would be available. So it's more of just about finding talent. And look, Deshaun is a talented player. He's a good leader. He will find ways to make it work with whoever they put around him.
So this is from CBS Sports. One thing we learned about each team in Week 17. For the Browns, Donovan Peoples-Jones has thrived with Deshaun Watson. Peoples-Jones doesn't have gaudy stats with Watson, but he shined when the ball comes his way. 1 catch Sunday, crucial 13-yard touchdown that put the Browns up by 2 scores. Had just 46 receiving yards last 3 games, but 2 touchdowns in that stretch. Jeff, I've said this. I don't know if he's a number 2. He's a guy that all teams that win and win at a high level have because he's going – now, he did drop a pass. That's fine. But he's a guy, if you need 8 yards, he's going to get you 8 yards, not 7. He does the little things that add up to wins.
He does. He's a quality player. I do think he's like one spot too high on the depth chart in Cleveland. That goes into where we want to have somebody else come in and be between him and Cooper. And unfortunately, that guy isn't on the roster right now. I think as a number 3, where you can move him around and look, he's got the speed, he's got the intelligence, he's got the blocking ability that we've seen from him. He is always going to have those occasional lapses. That was what dogged him at Michigan. That's why he was a 6th-round pick. You know, he would have 2 or 3 good games, then he'd have a game where he'd drop 2 of the 3 passes thrown his way. I think that's just who he is. But again, if he's your 3rd best wide receiver, you got a pretty good wide receiving room. And I think we're all pretty happy with what we've seen from Amari for the most part. getting that second guy in there, and having a guy who can step up. Like if he's a hot hand that week, if he's got a favorable matchup, Deshaun's going to find him, and he's proven, when he's looked at, he can make things happen. So I'm a big DPJ fan. I would love again to see them make him the number 3 and not the number 2 or 2A or whatever they want to call him. He's not that guy consistently, but if you can get him again for a week, I'll take that.
And they're going to play a lot more 3 wide receiver sets with Deshaun Watson. So it's not like he's going to be off the field if he's your number 3. This is also kind of interesting. So early passing downs, passing rate chart, and you see the guys up top: Joe Burrow, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Geno Smith, which is a little bit of a surprise, and the Browns, mainly because Jacoby Brissett started 11 games, are down near the bottom by the 49ers. But I would expect this to kind of flip, and the Browns will be up in that upper echelon because you got to trust your quarterback if you're going to throw a lot on early downs, and you do that if you're paying him $45 million a year.
Yeah, and one of the things that I took from looking at that chart, they're below the Texans, Watson's old team. And anybody going to argue that Davis Mills was an NFL starting quarterback? Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers. By the way, that Panthers number has risen up. They're still below the Browns, but since Sam Darnold has played relatively well recently, like that's not the company you want to keep. I know San Francisco is going to perhaps win the NFC. They don't win because of their quarterback. That's not where this Browns team is. This is a Browns team that needs its quarterback to play well in order to win. The Shanahan tree is they're an anomaly in that way. You've got to be up there with where Geno Smith is this year, up where Justin Herbert is, Josh Allen, and Deshaun can be and has been that guy before. That's one of the reasons why the Browns made the move. That's one of the reasons why we're going to have to swallow hard, and unfortunately, to reference we are going to have to wait for next year to see it because this offense isn't built that way. I do think that going forward, they should be more cognizant of what Deshaun does well and retool the offense more to things that he does well. Because I think we talked about earlier with what's good coaching, asking your best players to do things that they do well often. We just had that criticism that Joe Woods isn't doing that with the defense. I think Kevin Stefanski is smart enough and aware enough to start to do things that maybe played more to Deshaun's strengths, and that's certainly one of them. Throwing on first down, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I will tell you his last full year in Houston, they were very near the top in average gain on first down. They did that almost devoid of a run game. So Deshaun can get it done.
Well, and again, that's with Jacoby Brissett starting 11 games. That also goes to speak to people that want the Browns to run the football. They were running the football one of the most times on the early downs in the NFL. It was within the top 7 or 8 in the entire league. Jeff Risdon and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break. We'll talk a little bit about the size of the defensive line and the linebackers. Does that need to change? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, guys, this is Charlie, longtime Browns fan. I'd like your opinion on something. I think in free agency, although the Browns are a little tight on money, I think they need to sign one of the following defensive tackles: Javon Hargrave, Darren Payne, or David Tomlinson. And they also need to at least have one linebacker, either David Long of Tennessee or Drew Tranquill of the Chargers. Let me know what you think. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, I don't know about the specific names. I think they need, and Payne's a guy that, we mentioned he's a big Amari Cooper fan, and he gets after it. We saw him against Deshaun Watson. I just want a big guy that can absorb double teams, that can let their linebackers run, and they don't have them on this roster right now.
Well, they don't. And look, I'm a huge Javon Hargrave fan. Going back to, I got to sit down with him at the Shrine game. Was that 7-8 years ago when he was down there? And that was the guy that I knew was going to be good. And he is a more of a pass rusher presence. He's a guy. I think he has 9 sacks this year. Consistent. You remember from his Pittsburgh days. That's a guy that I would absolutely love. There are other guys that are out there. And you can, if you scheme it right and have the right mentality, you can get guys that are late round draft picks. But you've got to find guys that fit the role that you need them to do. And I don't think that they've done a very good job of doing marrying the need for what the role calls for and the players that they brought in to do that role. And I think that they need to get that right. Look, any of those guys would be fantastic. Linebacker is interesting. This is a good year to need a linebacker in free agency. David Long would certainly fit. There's going to be a lot of guys, and by the way, there's going to be a lot of vets that get cut because they're making too much money, and that's an area where the Browns can pounce and make some hay because we obviously can't speculate on who that's going to be. But if you look around the league and look at who's in cap trouble, a lot of those guys have a lot of linebackers that aren't necessarily playing to their contracts, and they're probably going to take care of it that way. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for the Browns to load up at both of those positions this offseason, even with the limited draft capital and the limited cap room that they have.
Yeah, they'll be able to find a way to get some cap room. They've rolled over a significant chunk. They can renegotiate one of the bigger contracts and convert it. So I think they'll be able to do that. A guy that's looked pretty good, is Reggie Ragland, the guy they signed off of the practice squad and has played pretty well the last couple of years. Kevin Stefanski was asked about needing bigger linebackers. Is that something they would look at in the offseason? Bigger linebackers like Reggie Ragland. Here's his answer.
Those are all things that you'd think about after the season, but I'll tell you, Reggie's brought a good, spirit to the locker room, having him around the building. So I think he's a good football player, excited to have him, but also nice to have a veteran, a guy who's kind of been around and seen different things. So he's fit in very well with our locker room. Reggie does bring that element to the game. I mean, you saw it on display this past Sunday. He's a physical football player. We know when you're playing the Steelers, it's a physical football game. They do a nice job in their run game, big physical running backs, a varied scheme. So you expect that you're going to have to play a very physical 60-minute game.
The other thing that, in listening to that strikes me is they were awfully young. And I think in retrospect, they wish they weren't quite as young at a couple positions.
Yeah, and if you go back to the beginning of the season, when we talked in the preseason, remember how excited we were about Anthony Walker as not just a great linebacker, but a veteran presence and a proven leader. And I think it took them a while to fill that void. And I think Ragland has done a very good job of doing that. He's playing better than I've ever seen him play before across what he's been with at least 3 different teams and sort of washed out with all those and was one of those guys that's like, God, if he was just a little bit more athletic, we could play him a lot, but he's just not. And he's found a home in Cleveland. I do hope that they bring him back. And I think it's less about the size and more about the leadership and the presence and the intelligence. Look, Taki's a big dude for a linebacker. Walker, I really do think that when we go back and dissect what happened when the season's over after Sunday, one of the things that we're going to look at is, man, they really missed a Walker a lot more than I think that anybody thought they would. And again, give Ragland credit and give Joe Wood some credit for finding a guy who can do what he wants him to do there. But that's a definite, and you can sort of see it in Stefanski's eyes there. Like, yeah, we like the leadership a lot, and I think that's something that they're going to look for this offseason. But again, Walker was going to be that guy, and I don't want to put all of it on him, but when they lost him, they lost a whole lot of vitality and locker room spirit and cohesion that they never really replaced until, unfortunately, it was too late.
Yeah, I agree with you about Walker. I think that was a huge loss. All right, before we let you go, NFL Power Rankings season in review. They go Chiefs 1, Bills 2, 49ers 3. They have the Browns at 20th. Regular season in 5 words or fewer. Trade leads to lost year. Even though Jacoby Brissett played well, Cleveland couldn't overcome Watson's suspension, a run defense that ranked last in the league, proving to be major culprit. And again, we've talked to death. The way they were set up, they were daring teams to run on them. Team said, okay, you got it. And it started with the Falcons.
Oh, it's tough. You know, I laugh because I just got commissioned to do this very thing by one of my editors. So you'll see one of mine of these, the year-end power rankings next week. And the Browns being 20, that's about right.
Yeah.
I do think I do wish that defense would have played better because it was there for them early in the season, and it just didn't materialize. And it's so frustrating. When I look back to when we talked in the preseason and even early in the season, I really thought this team could win 6 or 7 games without Deshaun because of the defense, and it's specifically because of the defense that they didn't. And that's just a very frustrating epitaph for a lost year. I agree that it's a lost year, and I think we probably had a little bit too high of expectations for the team, given where they were at and given all that they gave up with the whole cloud around Deshaun and everything that we've gone through and the team has gone through. But man, it was there for them, and it didn't happen. It's a rough ending of the year.
Yeah,
it really is.
I agree with you wholeheartely. You know, it's one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda, but here we are. 8-9 is the best it can be. Jeff Risdon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Pleasure, and go Cavs.
All right, Jeff Risdon, make sure you check him out, brownswire.com. Always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Another troubling sign for the Browns that has led to this 8-9 season. At best, Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys. During the game broadcast, I thought I heard the announcer say that our O-line leads the league with 25 holding penalties for this year. If true, what are causing these? Is there technique lacking? Is the quarterback holding the ball too long? Are the defenses we've been playing that hard to handle? What do you attribute this to? Holding calls are drive killers. Our O-line is considered a top group in the NFL. Hey, love the show, and let's beat them Steelers this weekend. Bye now.
Appreciate all of the voicemails. So yes, the Browns do in fact have the most holding penalties in the NFL, ahead of the Lions and the 49ers and the Packers and the Titans. So some very good run teams. So that could be attributing factor is the style that you play. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. And Casey, when you look at it, I don't think it's necessarily technique. You got to remember, guys were banged up and beat up. Teller in particular. You had Froholt playing a lot. It's a number of things. Some of it's fluky, but a lot of it is the style that they play. And you look at the top teams, and they all have a similar style.
Yeah, of those 25, 4 of them are actually on skill positions. DPJ has 3. Kareem Hunt has 1. Wills leads the team in holdings. Conklin's got 4. You got Treader and Batonio with 3 apiece. Froholt has 1. Interesting enough, Pochich doesn't have any penalties at all accredited to him this year. They were accepted. That's something to go on. But I think holding's so subjective. Like, it's something that literally happens on every play. It's just how the play unfolds, whether, light gets shown on it. If a quarterback scrambles away that an offensive line didn't really predict, and all of a sudden the defensive end has his arms outstretched, you're going to get that flag every time. And it happens every play. It is unfortunate, and the caller's right. It is a drive killer, 10-yard penalties. But those are effort penalties, and I would much rather see those than false starts or illegal shifts or delay of games. The Browns need to clean all that up. And you'd like to see them have less, but the reality is there's a lot of teams in that range from, 18 to where the Browns are at 25. Yeah,
and again, some of the teams are highly successful. The 49ers are arguably the best team in the NFC, or playing as well as anybody in the NFC at the very least. All right, stock up, stock down after Week 17. This is an article that KC wrote for Dog Pound Daily. Stock up, Grant Delpit, Tony Fields, and Deshaun Watson and the passing game. So without question, when you look at those, Delpit has played well the second half of the year, and I think they're finally letting him do some of the things he does well. It's kind of the way they're using him. And you saw in that second half a couple of the plays that really stand out. Defensive tackles and defensive ends that were getting a shot at Watson and couldn't bring him down. Now, he did throw one to one of his offensive linemen, but he still was able to avoid a guy that is, 100, 150 pounds bigger than him and stand upright.
Yeah, what he did before he threw the ball to Conklin was amazing, though. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's and he got sacked 4 times in that first half, and it probably should have been about 7. Right. He's shown some escapability, and you're starting to see it click. And I think we're having a different conversation about him had, they not dropped those touchdowns against the Saints. I think we're talking about 2 games back-to-back where he's figured it out in the second half and made some big throws. And it's finally clicked. The receivers caught the balls and made plays after the catch, and that's that kind of got the floodgates open. And after that, they scored touchdowns on 3 straight drives. That's something we hadn't seen since Watson took over. So, it's definitely encouraging, and we just need to see that momentum carry over into Pittsburgh.
The other one is Tony Fields, and that's a guy that, he hasn't been healthy enough to be on the field enough. But I agree with you. I'm like, okay, there's a guy that can play linebacker.
Yeah, and when him and Reggie Ragland are on the field together, the run defense was much better. Tony Fields has that ability to fly around. He was kind of drafted in the same mold as a JOK, but he, like you said, he had trouble getting on the field early. And now, just due to injuries, he's being baptized by fire. And these are invaluable reps that he's getting. I think this is going to situate him really well for next season to be one of those backups that they count on immediately, just as a rotational guy. And, and like you touched on Ragland earlier with you and Jeff, man, he's a thumper. He's a different style of linebacker. He's the guy that really brings it. And I think you're seeing the Browns, it's through injury, but they're kind of discovering that they have a couple guys that they could use, just as a backup rotational role. But that's invaluable in this league.
So stock down, we have Jedrick Wills, junior left tackle. And it's been a really uneven year for him and Kareem Hunt. And again, Hunt is probably not going to be back. You're starting to see a little bit of Jerome Ford, and Ford's one of those guys. You kind of, it's like, okay, let's see what he's got. Wills is concerning. I don't think he is played as poorly as some of the fan base want to believe, but he certainly has not lived up to the 10th pick in the draft.
Yeah, I touched on the article. He's been fine, but fine is not good enough for a top 10 pick, because when you pay him, you're going to have to pay him like he was the top 10 pick. So it's got to be frustrating for Bill Callahan to see these things over and over again, these lack of efforts, not playing through the whistle, kind of playing to his own internal clock, and, not until the ref says stop. And he gets caught a lot with it, like that play with Conklin. He gets beat on. They missed the scheme, and he kind of gets stuck in no man's land where he's not doing anything. Well, if he just runs towards the play, Watson's keeping it alive. He could have found work very easily if he just ran to the play, but he didn't. He just stand there kind of scratching his head, waiting for the next play, I guess. And those stack up, and you're seeing a lot of clips on social media, and that's not the reality. He's fine. He's okay, but he needs to be better than okay. So I expect him to pick up his fifth-year option, but I don't know what happens past that.
Yeah, and again, he's going to get an opportunity. He's got to make the most of it. He really does. CBS Sports came out with their quarterback rankings. Patrick Mahomes, number 1. Joe Burrow, number 2. Josh Allen, number 3. Justin Fields checks in at 15, just ahead of Deshaun Watson. Despite a 3-touchdown breakout in Week 17, he ranks 31st among all quarterbacks to start at least 5 games. Completion percentage, 56.7, ahead of only Zach Wilson. You can't argue with the numbers. The numbers are true. Hadn't played in 2 years, first time in a new system. Those are important things. I mean, I kind of minimize the rust thing. I think it's even more important because of the type of quarterback he is to get familiar with the system. He's starting to process it as quickly as he did his old offense, which the more he gets to that, the more he's going to look like what I expected him to be, which is one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, if we're just going off the 5-game sample size, 16's fair. I couldn't even argue if they said he was 18 to 20.
Right.
But you're not going to take 15 quarterbacks in front of him. If they redrafted that, you know what I mean? The talent's still there, and you're seeing the flashes of it. And he's starting to put it together. Like I said, if you just throw the Saints game where there were some drop touchdowns left on the board there, his numbers look a little different. But it is what it is. He's working himself back into it. And I, just like you, kind of minimized the rust. I figured 1 or 2 games and he'd be good to go. And it's been a slower build. And you're asking a fan base that's constantly being told to just wait some more. But that's where we're at with him. And I do think that he's rounding into form. And after a full offseason and a training camp, the expectation is he will hit the ground running next year. No, that doesn't mean anything for these past 5 games, but it's where we're at. So I think 16's fair.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly. Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, how's it going? Love the show. Just have a quick question about some tight ends. Do you think that Harrison Bryant will be back with the Browns on an extension? She's not going to break the bank or nothing, but, the kid's got pretty good hands. You know what I mean? He's good in blocking. He's a pretty good young player. Do you see the Browns keeping him around, extending him a little bit? I think what he got this year, one more year left, and because he was a 4th-round pick. So, I guess my question is just, does he get an extension? All right, have a good day.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, I would expect so. I would expect as a number 2 tight end, you give him Deshaun Watson and you see if he can develop and become a reliable path. I agree. He's got good hands and he has some potential.
I think he's a candidate to get an extension. I just don't think it happens this offseason. He's got $1 million on the books for next year. I don't really think it changes much. I think you let him get into next season and see how it goes. And then he might be one of those mid-season guys you might see get extended. But it's going to have to be a team-friendly deal. This team is kind of moving away from the multiple tight end sets, playing with more receivers. So you're not going to allocate a lot of money to a second tight end. So if it's a team-friendly deal, I see them getting it done. But yeah, I expect him to be extended in the long run. I just don't think it happens before next season.
Let's talk a little bit about Joe Woods. Do you see any scenario where they bring him back? We showed the numbers earlier, and then you look at the quarterbacks they've played, and it's defense has been a disappointment. There's no other way to put it.
Joe Woods, you don't have to go home, but you got to get up out of here, man. It's time. I think it's ran its course. I don't see any way they could bring him back. I think you risk the locker room. It's too much. This team needed to come out of the gates just firing on all cylinders. And had they done that, we're talking about playoffs right now. We were in year 3 of a system, and we saw immediate regression to start the season. That's inexcusable. And I think that if the Watson trade hadn't happened, I think he'd have been fired midseason. I think there was already so much turmoil. This team was kind of like just soaking in that they didn't want to throw more gasoline on the fire midseason. But I can't see a way they bring him back. I know that I think these conversations have already happened behind closed doors. But I think Kevin Stefanski is going to be tasked with picking a new DC, and a lot of his future is going to hang in that balance.
Yeah, and again, you got to get it right, and you got to get a guy that plays to the strengths of this defense. That's my biggest criticism is you had specific strengths, and you did not maximize them. You didn't play to them. All right, before I let you go, Pete Prisco, CBS Sports, with the predictions. He predicts the Browns beat the Steelers 21-20. Browns playing consecutive road games. They would love to close out their season beating their rivals. He thinks they do. Ugly game. Cleveland will end Pittsburgh's playoff chances, 21-20. I guess that's possible. I don't really have a great feel for how they're going to show up and play in Week 18.
Yeah, there's actually a lot hanging on this game for there are no playoff implications for the Browns. If you think about it, they have a chance to go 4-2 inside the division, something they've never done. They get a chance to sweep the Steelers, something they haven't done since '88. Hand Tomlin his first losing season. There's a lot hanging on this. And that's how you change the balance. For years, it was kind of looked at as big brother, little brother. Well, if the Browns are able to beat the Steelers on Sunday, that means they've ended the Steelers season in 2 of the last 3 years. And that's significant. That means something to the players in that locker room. I do think it is an ugly game. I agree with Prisco on that. I think first team to 24 wins, and we'll see. We'll see which team shows up. Steelers have a tremendous defense. And with T.J. Watt back, and with Conklin's health kind of being up in the air, it could get dicey. But I think the Browns are definitely capable of winning this game. It's just, can they get off to a fast start on offense?
Yeah, and the other thing that's going to be interesting to see is, can Deshaun Watson keep that rhythm going? They got into a rhythm in the second half. Let's see if they can extend that.
Yeah, he's going to have to deal with a lot of pressure in this game, just like he did against Washington. So it's kind of that was a good litmus test because Washington's front they're tremendous, so to go transition to the Steelers with Hayward and Watt, and there's going to be a lot of bombs flying back there. He's got to keep his composure, and his receivers kind of have to be on the same page with him because he's going to extend some things and do some things that aren't on the playbook. They just kind of have to get on that same page, and if they're able to do that, they could hit some big plays early and kind of set a tone.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out, Dawg Pound Daily. Before we go, the Guardians have invited 4 players to Major League spring training in the spring down in Goodyear, Arizona. One of them, a starting pitcher, and he's a 26-year-old. Touki Toussaint was a former first-round pick of the Arizona Diamondbacks, 16th overall. He's an intriguing guy. Has pitched in 23 games, started 170 major league innings, a 234 average against. He has walked 104 in those 170 innings and 181 strikeouts. But a guy that has a 10-7 record in the big league and just 26 years old. It'll be interesting to see if the Guardians can get him straightened out. Could have some upside for Terry Francona and the Guardians. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.